Week number 7 of Diversity and Global Awareness was called Managing Organizational Change and Diversity. The materials covered flexible working and gender roles, top companies for diversity and bullying. I was struck by topic of bullying and will share my thoughts. Before I do, I will summarize the material. Reading number 1 is an article entitled, Flexible Working, Work-Life Balance and Gender Equality. Flexible working, that is workers' control over when and where they work, has increased over the years and across most industrialized countries. There is increased demand for flexibility in the workplace. In the federal and private sectors, it is highly likely that flexible working will become the norm rather than the exception in many jobs. The first reading shares information from study that examined data from Europe and US to examine the potential flexible working has on the gender division of labor and workers' work-life balance. Flexible working can be used as a positive capability spanning resource useful for workers, especially women, to adapt their work to family demands, allowing mothers to maintain their work hours after childbirth. Due to society's pre-existing views on gender roles and gender normative views we have towards men and women's roles and responsibilities, flexible work can potentially traditionalize gender roles in the labor market and the household. Studies have shown that allowing flexibility of working hours has been beneficial to allowing both men and women opportunities to caring for their families and household while working. Workplace flexibilities have led to better work-life balance. However, some studies have shown that working from home leads to more work-family conflict. Other studies have shown that flexible working relieves work-to-family conflict, especially when families are transitioning to parenthood. This paper included so much information about work flexibilities in Europe and the US, class, work-family conflict and gender, how the domestic roles will evolve by gender over time and so much more. The overall message was that flexible working allows for better work-life balance. Gender as a factor. Women tend to use the flexibilities to take care of family and household concerns. Men, on the other hand, are more likely to use the flexibilities in ways that help them advance in their careers. I'm not sure how or if there is a way to level the differences, but it's something that should be examined. Reading number 2 is entitled, Sticks and Stones May Break Your Bones, But Words Can Break Your Spirit. Bullying in the Workplace. Bullying has existed since the beginning of time. It exists in every area of life from the homes to schools to playgrounds and even workplaces. Bullying in the workplace is a pattern of deliberate, destructive, and demeaning offenses meant to demean another adult. The paper lists 19 behaviors that have been identified as bullying. Some of them are abusive language, repeated threats of dismissal, constant criticism, blocking promotions, setting impossible deadlines, undermining work performance, ridiculous taunts, and others. Unfortunately, with the prevalence of social media, I can think of other behaviors beyond the 19 that were identified. This paper details how the US lags behind the other nations of the world when it comes to dealing with bullying and its effects on the demoralized victims. Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act protects victims of sexual harassment. It was determined that the same protections are afforded to bullying victims. Their harassment is considered general harassment. Included in this article are the stories of 2 victims who experienced workplace, Anita Hill and Celia Zimmerman. I vividly remember Anita Hill's testimony for the U.S. Senate confirmation hearings, Clarence Thomas's appointment to the Supreme Court. Thomas's behavior was reprehensible. An astounding statistic from the article came from a 1999 study of 1,100 federal workers. 38% of the participants had experienced bullying within the past year. That is a huge number in such a short period time frame. Workplace bullying creates an environment of psychological threat that diminishes morale and corporate productivity. The TED Talk video included in this week's assignment covers some of the devastating mental health impacts the victims experience, including anxiety, panic attacks, depression, PTSD, and suicidal ideation. Organizations must do more to protect their employees. Article number 3 lists Forbes 2022 list of America's best employers for diversity. The rankings resulted from surveys of 60,000 Americans working for businesses with at least 1,000 employees. Participants ranked their organizations on a number of diversity criteria. The resulting data from surveys have become even more important as there is increased focus on industries in light of the increased racial disparities, including the murder of George Floyd and the financial impacts of COVID-19 pandemic on Black workers and Black-owned businesses. COVID uncovered the magnitude of inequalities in communities of color, especially Black and minority-owned businesses. Forbes's ranking features a higher proportion of companies in banking and financial services, the healthcare and social sector, and education. Progressive Insurance ranked number 1 largely because of their DEI efforts, including their Dare to Disagree diversity workshop. The article listed efforts underway by many of the high-ranking companies to showcase the kinds of initiatives that are positively impacting diversity. Notably, Adobe was ranked number 6 for their partnerships with HBCUs and Hispanic-serving institutions. Other companies need to take note. As I learned in last week's lesson, corporations that prioritize DEI are more attractive to many potential investors, customers and potential employees. The video this week was a TED Talk entitled, Leadership in Eliminating Workplace Bullying, featuring Joanne Simon Walters. Workplace bullying is a psychological power imbalance that is likened to domestic violence. Of the victims who reported to have been bullied, 80% have experienced anxiety, 52% panic attacks, 49% depression and 30% PTSD. Many victims of bullying experience suicide ideation. Harassment in the workplace will not stop on its own. Leaders must be intentional and do their part to address it. Leaders in the workplace must have the courage to be different, to go against the grain. Leaders can choose to lead differently within their span of influence if they choose to. Ms. Simon Walters talked about being a transformational leader, one who has idealized influence, intellectual stimulation, individualized consideration, and inspirational motivation. One sentiment was echoed throughout the video: leadership is a process. A process can be learned. Aside from the vital role that leaders must play, organizations have to prioritize eliminating workplace bullying. They must do more than offer than the minimum of presenting training and creating policies. Doing only those things would be like checking a box. They must move to a higher level of morality. Civility training has to be a priority, training that promotes respect and civility in the workplace, not only a focus on eliminating illegal harassment. Civility needs to become ingrained in the corporate culture. There are a lot of moving parts when it comes to eliminating workplace bullying. Most importantly, it requires ethical leadership who have the courage to do something as opposed to being bystanders. As the speaker said, it takes transformational leaders who cause followers to higher levels of morality and motivation. Earlier I noted that I would share my reaction to this week's topic of bullying. I did not realize the prevalence of workplace bullying. One statistic noted that 38% of those polled had experienced bullying in the workplace in just the last year. Even as an HR manager, the speaker of the TED Talk video experienced demeaning, demoralizing, intimidating bullying from a superior over the course of 3 years. HR leadership is engaging in that behavior. The speaker was also victimized by her peers when the disrespectful pictures were taken. Wow. Again, HR professionals, people who should know better than others. The more hurtful part of that experience for the speaker was the colleague she felt safe confiding in. That colleague turned out to know about the pictures from the beginning and chose not to do anything about it. She was a bystander. Everyone in the workplace has a role to play to ensure that there is no bullying in the workplace. Organizations have overall corporate responsibilities. Leaders have responsibilities. Perpetrators must change their behaviors. And everyone else needs to get away from the playground mentality and take a stance that makes it known that bullying behavior is unacceptable, and if they see something they will say something. Finally, I have a role to play. I must model a higher level of morality in my sphere of influence.